Hey, what's going on, everybody? Brad here from the Jurassic Park podcast, and today in this video, we're going to give you a sampling of a recent episode of the Jurassic Wire in episode number 211 of the Jurassic Park podcast. So if you want to hear the entirety of our discussion, go check it out on the podcast feed. But in this sampling, you're going to hear us break down the entirety of the canon of Jurassic. So this has been a hotly debated topic here in the fan community. What is canon? What is not canon? Soft canon, hard canon, different levels, whatever it may be. I hope you enjoy this conversation because it gets a little crazy, and we really debate what canon is for the community, for the franchise as a whole, and what it means to us. So go ahead, take a listen to this one if you want the entirety, which features other topics as well in the beginning portion of the episode. Go ahead, like I said, go to Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, download the Jurassic Park podcast. But today, enjoy our discussion about canon. But now, we're gonna
strap in.
we're gonna take it to a new level here, I think. I honestly don't even know how to approach this. I did a live stream about this a little while back because it was kind of fresh in everybody's minds, and then of course the Wire records at the end of every month, so we had to wait. I think this was like in the beginning.
3 days after we recorded the last one.
Oh, did it? Okay. Oh man. So all right. You know what? I'm just going to go ahead and play some audio to kind of. Should I actually? Yeah, I'm gonna play this just to kind of get some idea as to.
Do it while I shut my door and get angry.
All right. So over on Instagram, Jurassic World Live Tour, that like we were talking about before, that's going all over the country. The live show that has giant animatronic dinosaurs. Live actors, a compelling story, vehicles, stunts, fire, all kinds of crazy stuff. They had a world premiere several weeks into their tour, and Colin Trevorrow was there, and he had the chance to talk about it on Jurassic World Live Tour's Instagram stories. So here is a quick clip about what he had said. Oh, the volume is all the way down.
We call soft canon.
Here, let me go back.
You know, it's we have something we call soft canon, which is that it happened, but it also exists in its own space. And you know, Feld, all of the writers and the creators, they made a new story, an original story that exists.
All right, so that's. Let me just go ahead and play it back again.
You know, it's we have something we call soft canon, which is that it happened, but it also exists in its own space. And you know, Feld, all of the writers and the creators, they made a new story, an original story that exists.
Okay, all right. So that was part of the clip there. There was a little bit more, but the portion that we really wanted to discuss with everybody is soft canon and canon in general. So we wanted to do a big kind of conversation about canon. What does it mean? What's valid? What's not? How much anybody cares? And Colin is talking about soft canon. So this kind of big, discussion in the fan community started based off of this soft canon comment, because the creators of Jurassic World Live Tour, and Aaron, you can attest to this, we were there in person, and I've been there a few times with them, talking about how this experience is canon, how it matters, and how they worked, hand in hand with NBC Universal and Colin Trevorrow and Frank Marshall and Steven Spielberg to make sure that this is something that fits into Jurassic World and what they've got going on. And they've said canon time and time again. And then Colin kind of waltzes in here and says, you know what, guys, this is actually something called soft canon. So that's
the whole thing.
That's the introduction. So we'll kind of back it up here, I think. If you guys don't know or not aware as to what canon is, this is a very it's somewhat complicated. It's sort of not complicated at all, but it is also somewhat complicated.
Well, it's funny, right? It's super controversial, but there's really nothing controversial about the definition of canon. So continue.
Yeah, exactly. I'm probably blowing out the speaker here because I'm like so amped up now.
Oh yeah, no, me too.
But all right.
It's the show you've all been waiting 40 minutes to listen to, or an hour to listen to, because I think we're gonna go off on this.
All right, so canon. I've got the Wikipedia up. So this says in fiction, canon is the material accepted as officially part of the story in the fictional universe of that story. It's often contrasted with or used as the basis for works of fan fiction. So basically saying that, fan fiction kind of models their work off of canon. Alternative terms are mythology, timeline, universe, continuity. But yeah, so this is something that kind of derives itself from biblical canon. That's kind of where this term comes from. Sets of books regarded as scripture. And then there's something else called non-canonical apocrypha. I don't know what that word is. Never heard it before until I went to this Wikipedia page. Apocrypha. So I guess that's something that is not canon. Something that is not regarded as scripture in biblical canon. So this is how old, I guess, this terminology is.
Sure, and I can maybe speak a little bit to it if I'm not mistaken, and I could be wrong. I think essentially it's like when you talk about biblical terms, there's in like the NIV, there's like, I think 66 books that are considered the Bible. And then like other churches will add other books. Like I think the Catholic Church has like extra books that they add. But they're not recognized amongst like all Christian religions as the Bible. They're like, and not saying that they're like necessarily false teachings or like that they're not good. It's just that like, I think there's 66 books in the Bible that are all agreed upon as like, they have to be there in order for you to call it a Bible.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Oh, that definitely makes sense. I mean, cool. I get the term, but I just know a lot of people are kind of confused as to what canon is in general. And from a film standpoint or just a pop culture standpoint, I guess, it's something that's fairly popular nowadays because, and it's the one thing I always go to when discussing this topic. And I know I discuss this topic a lot here on this show, Star Wars. I think it's the most valid route to take when discussing canon because there's a lot of options to discuss. So Star Wars has been around since 1977, and right. they came out with an assortment of films and then randomly just started making books, and they were kind of really not really checked off by George Lucas. It was kind of just things that were made, and it was just a wild assortment of books, comic books, video games, anything you want, Star Wars related. And then, 2012 comes around when Disney buys Star Wars. They're still producing content at this point, something like Star Wars: The Clone Wars, the animated TV show. And Disney decides, and Lucasfilm both decide, we're going to erase canon. We're going to erase, expanded universe. We're going to erase the entirety of the expanded universe. All those books you read, all the comic books you read, it's all going away as of right now. Everything that we are making going forward should be considered canon. The only things they didn't get rid of were the films, obviously, and the Clone Wars. The Clone Wars film itself, and maybe I think like the Darth Maul Son of Dathomir comic. So yeah, they decided to start from scratch. And then from that moment onward, pretty much nearly anything that wasn't like Lego or something specifically aimed at kids was therefore canon. So, and I said this the other day, I am on my 21st Star Wars novel since this new canon has been instated.
That's
here.
Crazy.
So, and
there's been 21 new books?
That's not even all of them. I've just only read 21.
Jeez.
So, and when I was sitting there reading that book and this canon issue has had a rise or come up, I got sad. I got sad because I thought, Jurassic can barely, pump out one book and a live tour and maybe a video game or whatever and call that canon. They can't even do that barely without controversy.
Dude,
and
Uncharted has a book and like an extra game. And
I've read them. Yeah, I've read that, and I consider that canon, a part of the thing that happened.
It's canon. Xbox has books. There's Gears of War books. There's Halo books. They're canon.
Yeah.
Right?
So Star Wars, I think, did itself a huge favor. Now, this is not everybody's point of view.
No,
because people are mad that the expanded universe disappeared. But I personally think Star Wars did a huge favor, erasing the entirety of its content, essentially. And then in 2015, this really should have been the state of Jurassic. It was primed for it. They failed to do it. They failed to do it. The Jurassic was, restarting itself. It was, building a new universe based on the old universe. That stuff still existed, even though people were questioning it back then, just thinking that maybe the first film was the only thing that ever mattered. But everything matters. The Lost World, Jurassic Park 3, those things mattered. Film-wise, that's it. And then Jurassic World came out, and that's the moment when Universal lacked the confidence of this series, I think.
Well, it started before that, when it was like on Twitter. It started with, so are you building, like, is this going to be like a new universe like the MCU or like Star Wars? And Colin was very much like, we're not trying to create a giant expansive universe. And it's like, bro, your movie's called Jurassic World. Like, we get what you're doing. And so I don't understand why he was so like, he could have just easily have been like, look, if the people want this and they turn out to see Jurassic World, then yes, of course, we're going to be creating an expanded movie verse in the form of more movies. But like, why? First off, why be invited to Feld Entertainment, right? Or the world premiere, whatever it was they were doing, and then like give this like poo-poo answer with kind of like a smirk as to like, it's not really canon. And like the only thing, especially when he like smiles, I'm like, so you didn't like it? Like that's what it boils down to, right? It's like,
I honestly thought that was pretty rough, and it was
weird.
It was very weird, and it honestly hurt a little bit to see that, because something that we here at the podcast have been saying for ages now, since the promo of this thing, that this show, this live tour, is canon. It's part of canon. And then to have him say that was disheartening, very disheartening. And the only thing at that moment I could think of was all the people that have worked on Jurassic World live tour that have been saying this stuff, and how kind of hurtful that was to that creative process, everything that they have done, everything that they've worked towards and achieved over time, to say that it doesn't matter.
I mean, look, I'll say this, and it's like being a creative, like professionally, like sure, not everyone is going to love your work. There's been things, I think, with George Lucas coming out and saying he's not really been a fan of the new trilogy for Star Wars. And like, I think the way JJ handled it was like really well done. Like he came out and he said like, look, we respect George. We understand it's gotta be hard for him to like kind of let go of this thing that he's created.
Yeah.
And I love the line in Abrams' interview where he's like, do I wish this was George's favorite movie of all time?
Of course.
Yes, I do. Of course I do. He's my childhood hero. But like, at the same time, like, owning it, like we're the new creative force behind this. And so like he kind of, I thought Abrams' interview was great, and I just kind of thought it was so weird for Trevorrow to go down there and be like, just the way he did it, it was like, fine if he didn't like it, but like honestly, like or maybe he did, I don't know, but it definitely felt like he didn't like it. And I don't understand what's so hard about saying or about acknowledging, yes, this is a different medium, which means it's a different style of show. The story is canonical, but maybe was it Chad?
Yeah.
Maybe Chad wasn't as overbearing in quote unquote canon as he was maybe portrayed in this medium, right? So like
he didn't even need to go that far. He didn't have
no,
to
he
say
didn't even need to go that. He
anything
could have been
about
like,
its
yes,
placement.
he could have been easily been like, look, this story is canon. We may or may not touch on this in the future. Like
exactly.
that's all he had to do.
That's all it has to do. And I want to clear up some confusion here about canon. We'll back it up just a little bit before we get too deep again.
We have soft canon now.
So we have canon, which we have already established is scripture. It is what has happened. So in Jurassic, we have some variations here. We have the novels, which are their own canon, Jurassic Park and The Lost World. Not The Evolution of Claire, that's separate. The novel canon is those 2 original books by Michael Crichton. That doesn't translate to the film canon. That's separate. There's the novel canon, and then you have the film canon. Because there's too many discrepancies between the two. They can't overlap. So you cannot interchange them no matter what. No matter what.
They're also the movies are retellings of those books. So like you literally can't have the same story told 2 different ways be canon, right? Like
sure.
if we pulled aside Jen, right, and I told her a story about what your day-to-day responsibilities are at work, and then you tell her your day-to-day responsibilities, and then I walk up to her and say this is what Brad does at work all day. One of us is lying.
Well, we'll get to that because I have a lot to say about that as well. And that's very different too. So novel canon, film canon. So film canon, as we know, Jurassic Park, The Lost World, JP3, Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, Battle at Big Rock, and Jurassic World 3. That's our standard. That is set in stone. Films don't change. Films are films. They are what they are. Everything that happened in Jurassic Park happened. Everything that happened in Lost World happened. And you have to consider everything that happened in Jurassic Park. So then when you go to make JP3, you have to consider what happened in those 2 movies and moving forward and so on. Is there anything that kind of fits in between those things is a big question as well. So that's kind of where we're sitting right now is levels of canon. Are there levels of canon? I don't think so. And I don't think that's really up for debate, really. I think there's canon, which is something that matters, and then there's not canon, and that doesn't matter. So for instance, Jurassic Park, the movie, or let's go all the way to Jurassic World. You have the films, and then you also have Lego Jurassic World. The Indominus Escape, we'll say that, or the Legend of Isla Nublar. These are 2 canon. These are 2 created materials that use the source material, and expand upon it in ways that really does not correlate with what you see in the films. So that can't be considered canon. That's not canon. That's something that is not canon.
It's simply the Lego stuff simply cannot be canon because Lego exists in a world where physics acts differently. And I know that's like it's like, oh, physics. Why are we talking about physics in a canonical discussion? But like physics is important to the world, right?
Owen jumps out of like a helicopter and rides a pteranodon in the Lego stuff. So sure, maybe Indiana Jones kind of did the same thing in the Temple of Doom, but this is not that. So the Lego stuff is just so wildly different. In the Lego stuff, a lot of the original characters have returned to the island at some point or another. There's a lot of really weird, wild stuff going on in there. They'll take a Lego piece of one dinosaur and put it on another and then put it on another, and then it looks like some sort of weird hybrid and say that's a villain of the series or something. So
they literally rip apart dinosaurs and stick them back together.
In no way, we all are in agreement that is not canon, right? There are things that kind of straddle the line and things that are supposed to be considered canon. Materials I think that were once considered canon, maybe to a certain extent. You have like the Topps comics. You remember the old Topps comics?
Do I remember them? I've read them recently. They're ridiculous. I never considered, even though it says official sequel to Jurassic Park on one of them, it is definitely not.
It says it on the top that this was the official sequel to Jurassic Park. So at one point in time, this was considered canonical. You know, Muldoon lives. You know, it's some crazy stuff happens in that. Another one, Jurassic Park the game. This is something that, you know, pretty much could be considered canon. There's a lot of crazy stuff in there as well, but it ties in well to Jurassic Park. And when this came out, I think it was 2011, maybe.
They were like, "This is the official sequel. This is exactly what happens after Jurassic Park." Like, they were very open about it.
Telltale was all about that. You know, they've got their Walking Dead stuff. They had Back to the Future, and the Back to the Future one, I'm like, this is canon. This works. It fits in. And Jurassic Park, I did the same. I'm like, you know what? This works. It fits in. Everything's great. And you can pull stuff from canon or, you know, material as well. Mount Sibo is in Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. It explodes. We see it happen. And that comes, you know, partially from this game. This is something that comes from the game. We also have stuff like Trespasser. Oh, let me go back to Jurassic Park, the game. But one reason that you can't consider that canon is because in the game, the T-Rex demolishes the front of the visitor center. And as we know, when you watch Jurassic World, the kids enter through the front of the visitor center, and it's intact.
Okay, fine. That's a pretty big thing. But I feel like even the movies themselves have not inconsistencies. What's the word I'm looking for? They have
plot holes, or
they have what?
Plot holes?
Not plot. There's flaws. Like there's continuity errors.
Oh, yes. Oh, for sure.
There's continuity errors, right? And so I would say yes, the demolishment of the visitor center front, that would be a very big
pretty big one. And we'll get into something else a little bit later that I think you can do what you want. There's also Trespasser, which is not really it can't really ever have been, I don't think, considered canon, but there's material in there that everybody really latches onto and really wants to consider canon. Stuff like the Lost World website that had some really valuable material on there. Even the Lost World deleted boardroom scene. That's something that I have, you know, and it's funny because it's literally in the movie. When you watch it on like TNT, when you watch it on TV, it's in the movie. Oh, I think along with the, you know, Roland punching the dude at the bar or whatever, at the you know, that restaurant or whatever it was. So the Lost World boardroom scene is an interesting one because that's like a pretty heavy scene that deals with some interesting stuff and payouts for deaths on the island, and but it also kind of hints at the destruction of Nublar, which we know it wasn't destroyed. The dinosaurs still lived and were found and used in Jurassic World, and the island's still, you know, usable. So those are some things that I think, you know, at one point or another, we certainly could have considered these things canon. Now we're kind of stuck at the point where, you know, we have a bunch of material that we're like, well, is it canon? I don't know. You know, I don't know. Jurassic World Live Tour is something that they specifically told us this is canon. The evolution of Claire is another one too. That Colin has actually said, our buddy Chris Pugh asked him a question once, should the books like the upcoming Claire-based prequel novel be considered canon? He asked that over on Twitter, and Colin responded, yes, Bryce Dallas Howard is consulting on the book with me. So he's saying right there, should this be considered canon? Yes.
But so what's funny is, what does Bryce Dallas Howard consulting on the book have anything to do with whether or not it's canon?
Well, I guess, no, that doesn't really have anything to do with canon per se, but I guess continuity, like you were talking about before. Is this something you think your character would do?
Sure. Okay.
Yeah, you know? 100%. So that's something there. And, you know, stuff like Jurassic World, the exhibition, that's a new thing that's been produced over the past few years. That's not canon at any point. So I just wanted to point out the fact that you have... What?
What was that thing you said is not canon?
Jurassic World, the exhibition.
Oh,
It's
sure.
it's
Yeah.
it's just a thing that you walk through that has dinosaur. It's very awesome. It's very cool. But there's no canon element to it. You travel to the island by ferry, walk through the certain paddocks on the island, and similar stuff that happens in the movie happens. But it's not really something you would ever say, "Hey, this is canon." But also, we have theme parks too. It's something that you could look at these storylines and like Jurassic World: The Ride, something that has been revamped and features stuff from the movies and stuff like that. But it's so drastically different than how things happen in the movies that it's another thing that you can't consider canon.
You can't consider all these things you're saying that you can't consider canon. You can't consider them canon because they step on the toes of what you were told in the movie, which
Exactly.
we are to understand is biblical canon. So, of course these things aren't canon, they
Well, you can say that though, but Star Wars is doing that though. They're doing it. Like I was saying before, they have all these novels and comics and everything's revamped. All the video games that they're producing are canon.
yeah, but Star Wars makes sure to not step on the toes.
I know, and that's
which is why they axed everything out of the 70s and through the 90s, because they were like, we're not going to pay someone to be the keeper of the 70s through the early 2000s for us, even though there was someone doing that job anyway.
Yeah,
they're like, no, we're done. We need to make sure that we take the brand and we say, this is day zero. Here's what counts. Moving forward, we're going to make sure to pay homage to all that stuff. And Jurassic World was the opportunity to do it. And yet it's still like we're living 25 years ago.
Yeah.
Getting random stuff.
So, yeah, but for instance, Star Wars, they've just in the past few months unveiled Galaxy's Edge at Disney, parks in the United States, and that's canon. The theme park is canon. What happens there is now being branched off into novels. Several novels have already taken place in that universe, and things that happen there are tied back to the movies and whatnot, and the animated series, and so it's so interconnected, and it's so beautifully done throughout all landscapes of animated, comic, theme park, film, everything. Even audio, they have audio dramas that are not a written source material at all. It's just a audio drama that was put together. And then in our case, we also have stuff like the viral material. So we have Mizrahi Global, which kind of, gave us a lot of information about the Mizrahi. Yeah, fills in gaps. The DPG, which is, there was an insane amount of documentation in there. Extinction Now was kind of like the adversary to the DPG. So those are a few sites that you can go to and fill in gaps. And there's great information in there. So where are we now? I mean, we have hard. This is the levels that people like to instill upon canon, I guess you could say. You have hard canon. People like to call it hard canon. People also like to say soft canon, as Colin did. I don't think those are things. You have canon, and then you have not canon.
Well, here's the thing with soft canon, right? And my favorite is head canon. That's my all-time.
Yeah, that's another one, and that's not a thing either. That's just your own musings.
Why infuse the word canon into that at all?
That's why I'm trying to differentiate canon, because canon is only one thing. It's not two things. It's not three things. It's one thing.
What I love about soft canon, and I hate it, number one. But two, it's just basically, here's what soft canon is. Soft canon is a way for the current steward of the property to say, yeah, I'm not dealing with that. At this point, I am 100% certain that there will be something in Jurassic World 3 that completely contradicts Jurassic World Live Tour's story.
Yeah.
Because
I'm kind
he
of
gave
thinking the
that
same
weird
thing.
little smirk and was like, "Oh, it's soft canon. I don't feel like playing in that sandbox. I got my own sandbox. No one else is invited to join in, right?"
Yeah.
And so you have that, and you have the steward who has done a phenomenal job. By the way, like I'm not at all complaining about the quality of this, but Colin Trevorrow is the steward. Unfortunately, Colin Trevorrow is not in charge. Like he has producers above him that run the franchise in general, like Frank Marshall, right? So really, Colin being the steward is unfortunate that he's done such a great job because he's really not the guy who can make these decisions. Like he's the guy that can like basically go to Frank Marshall and be like, I would love for this to be canon or not be canon, right? And Frank Marshall literally has, I think, the be all end all decision making on that, or maybe Spielberg, right, above him. So it's just really, really weird that he was like, oh, it's like soft canon. Because to me, saying something is soft canon is basically saying, I didn't particularly like it. I'm not going to be beholden to this story, and future filmmakers shouldn't be beholden to either.
Yeah.
But
so
why not? Like if a filmmaker comes along in 5 years, why not just be like, hey, you also need to watch the live tour like video that we took, because your story has to replicate, or your story has to at least consider what happened in there.
Yeah.
Like how hard would it be to basically say you can't negate what happened? Like it's very easy to not negate something. You just don't talk about it.
Making content that feels like it doesn't matter is problematic. I want to throw it back to February 2018. This account here at JerryRock22. If you're listening, what's up? He threw it out to Colin to ask a question. Can we consider JP the Game 2011 canon to Jurassic Park and Jurassic World movies? Colin did respond, and he said, I've consulted on all our new games, and I like to consider them soft canon. I don't want to hold the developers back from making a better gaming experience by having to adhere to every detail and rule. Games are their own medium and their own world. Now, I want to say to that, no. Okay? I'm mad about that comment right now because I have not played it yet, but Jedi Fallen Order, huge game right now. Everybody is absolutely in love with it, and it is something that 100% matters. It's not its own world. It's not its own medium, and it's something that the developers, they had to make sure that this game fit into the grander universe. So I'm very upset to, this is an old comment, of course, but he's using the term soft canon for, he said, one of his newer games, Jurassic World Evolution. He's calling that soft canon.
Well, but of course it's not canon though, dude. Like,
oh, I know that. I know.
How can that possibly be canonical?
It's not.
So like, why not just say it's not canon? It's just using our property for a fun game. Like,
that's what I'm trying to just differentiate here, because he's calling Jurassic World Evolution soft canon, but also Jurassic World Live Tour, which has been touted as canon, something that does not tread on anything ever. It really fits in perfectly into canon. So he's holding these two items in his hands, and he's saying they're equal. They're the same thing. You could essentially use both of them in the movie experience, which is blatantly not true whatsoever. Jurassic World Live Tour 100% could be tied in with the universe that the movies have built. Jurassic World Evolution absolutely cannot be.
So let me get this straight. Is your frustration based on the fact that he's taking something that could actually work, could give us this morsel that fans have been wanting forever, and he's withholding that from us? Is that kind of where your frustration is coming from?
So my frustration is that, for sure. I think it's also the inability to create a world and to trust your creators and to have faith and all that. I just think that they've done themselves a disservice by saying things are soft canon and what the problem is by saying something is soft canon, you're essentially saying it doesn't matter to the overall story. And what you're doing is you're underselling your product. You're telling everybody that this doesn't really matter. So therefore, you almost don't even have to see it to see our movies,
Yeah, but see, here's the thing. Okay, so Camp Cretaceous is coming out soon, and apparently now everything's up in the air whether or not it's canon or not, right? Like, no one is taking anything away from me. I can still enjoy all of these products, right? And that was the big thing when there was backlash against the Star Wars deleting canon, right? It was like, look, no one's taking this away from you. All we're saying is that, look, we need to tell a story, and these are the things that we want to choose to be a part of that story moving forward.
No longer in the timeline.
Right. So, okay, Jurassic World Evolution. I totally loved it. I 100% agree. That cannot be canonical. This doesn't hurt my feelings, right?
No.
This doesn't hurt my feelings as a consumer. I think that's what's happening to a lot of people. They're feeling like, well, I really liked this thing, and you're telling me it doesn't matter. It's like that does stink. I totally agree. But if it's not canon, that's not for us to decide, which is why I can't stand this concept of headcanon, because Brad, if you said to me, well, in my headcanon, Jurassic Park, you are not the curator. You're not the steward. I'm sorry, Brad, what you perceive, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to the collective conversation of what happened in the aftermath of Jurassic Park, the movie. Right. Yeah. So I think we can still enjoy everything, but I think it is very important to denote this is canon, this is not canon, right? Enjoy everything. Have fun. Love the product, love the IP, but please understand that the Jurassic World movies moving forward will or will not recognize this piece of content.
Yeah, and that's what I feel like is a downfall of this world building that they've set out to do is they're cutting themselves short where they could really make this a very rich environment. Like I said, 2015, it was primed for it. They just failed to do it. They could have set up all of this stuff. They could have gotten the book started sooner. They could have gotten the live tour out there before the exhibition. They could have done all of this stuff to tie it and make a grand universe here. But they just didn't. And even when they do it, they walk backwards. They walk backwards. And messy is a different thing entirely because, yes, this entire series is a bit messy. We kind of mentioned that. But this just makes it even messier, which is really... it's annoying.
Well, they had the opportunity to have a dust pile on the floor, but now what they have is they have a house from hoarders, right? They had the opportunity in 2014 or 2015 to be look, moving forward, the things coming forward are canon. Everything else aside from the movies in the 90s and early 2000s, that we can consider that expanded universe. They literally could have been it's expanded universe, because as a kid, I never opened up my Kenner toy, got the collector card with the image, and was like, oh, that's canon. This guy shot this Pteranodon with this rifle, as we all historically know in the podcast. That is one of my favorite images of all time, right? But I never thought as a kid that was something that happened at Jurassic Park, because it was displayed to me in some format of media. Mm-hmm. It was, to me, that was expanded universe, and the comics to me were expanded universe, because I was always under the impression, especially in those days, that every medium was its own thing except for Star Wars. Star Wars was this special thing that had this giant galaxy that they could play around in, right? But with Jurassic, it's so small. It was, to me as a kid, it was very easy to decipher what did and didn't count, and it was still all enjoyable, right? But then, like I said, in 2013 with the and here's the word soft again, the soft reboot of the franchise, right? Or the continuation of the franchise, they had the opportunity to say, the only thing in the past that matters are the movies. Here's a clean slate, and now everything counts. They had that opportunity, and they're squandering it. It's so weird.
Yeah, in a world where, this is a good way I personally like to describe it, where this world, we have so much material to take in. We have new streaming services popping up left and right. We have TV shows just popping up every hour. It seems like that we have to watch, that we have to consume video games that matter, in a certain universe, things that are actually counted and qualify like as part of the story. And I find it hard to consider my valuable time, because I have to take my time with my family. That comes first. I want to consume as much media as I can. So, I'm going to the movies. I'm sitting on the couch watching all of these things, getting all the streaming services. But when I find out something doesn't necessarily matter, it gives me less reason to enjoy it or to take it in. You were mentioning that the art and everything like that. That's certainly a valuable position, because Jurassic World Evolution, never a thing that I ever even considered to ever be associated with the word canon, but yet here we are. And that's just, I just play that because it was fun, and it's a Jurassic thing. So I don't really think that'll ever change. You'll always be able to enjoy and experience these things, but the fact that you don't have this groundwork for a greater universe or a greater storyline, it's kind of upsetting. At the same time, we mentioned that this is such a mess. Like we talked about, there's so many inconsistencies throughout the different movies, and some of the some of the DPG stuff, or even Jurassic World Live Tour. I'm sure you could find something in there, like you're mentioning. Sometimes the characters are a bit over the top or something like that, but at the same time, there's some pretty valuable stuff in there that you want to use in the storyline. I think you mentioned headcanon, and for me, that's not this like untouchable thing like it seems like it is for you. I think it's valuable headcanon. It's just not. It shouldn't. There should be like another word, because it's not canon. It's just kind of like what you consider canon, and that's
it's
perfect.
Your favorited version of the story. Like, look, in my favorite version of the story, Jurassic Park 3 simply doesn't exist. I didn't find that movie valuable enough to want to continue that in my head.
Yeah.
Right? But like, bad news, Aaron, that movie exists.
Yeah.
And so like, this is like when I would talk to like hardcore Star Wars fans, right? Back in, the mid 2000s. Well, the prequels, that's garbage, right? That's not my canon. I got bad news for you. Jar Jar is real.
It happened. Yeah.
Right.
It's a real thing.
So like, it just makes no sense as to where we came up with this headcanon. It's a justification for not wanting to feel bad that something you like doesn't count.
I think there's a little bit of nuance between, quite a bit of nuance between like anybody that says, well, I didn't really like Jurassic Park 3. This is always the go-to one in this community, is like, well, I didn't really care for that one. So I don't think about it. I don't consider it in my storyline. Like we're saying, it's not really in my head.
My storyline doesn't matter.
No, it does, though. It does.
Conversation.
No, sure. I mean, you can't have the conversation without considering everything. That's the point. You can't have the conversation about what happened without considering that. But in your head, when you're thinking about it on the couch, sure, that headcanon is valuable to yourself. But you can't sit there and argue with somebody, or interchange the stuff that happened with the novels, or, do any of this stuff and have a valuable conversation when you're not considering every detail of the canon. And I know it's very tough, because another thing that people like to talk about is availability, which I unfortunately don't think that's a satisfactory answer.
Unfortunately, I don't think it is either.
No, if something's not available to you, it shouldn't be considered canon. That's a thought that many have.
I mean, look,
I don't
right
think
now,
that's
The Mandalorian
accurate.
is not available in the United
everybody.
Kingdom?
To most countries. Yeah, it's not really available to a lot of the world. And even to those that it is available, you still have to pay for it. Like, you still have to buy into a service that you don't already own, or whatever. So
bad news, it's canon.
It is canon, yeah.
You can't make these decisions based on availability.
Yeah, and that came up a lot with Jurassic World Live Tour. Is a lot of people have said, why should I matter? Why should I care? It's not like I'll ever see it. And then I respond like, hey guys, like give it some time. New dates will be announced. It will have the opportunity to at least be available to as many people as it possibly can be available to. And who knows what the future holds. If there will ever be some sort of release outside of that, I don't know. But that really shouldn't be a factor, in the discussion.
No,
you
because
can't really say that.
I won't go into my controversial statement I made about whether or not you see, but like, look, if something happens in history, just because you didn't see it doesn't mean it didn't happen, right?
Yeah.
So, to these people who say like, well, I'll never see the live tour. It's like, okay, but you'll hear about it. Why don't you seek out the story? Maybe look at a news art. Like someone out there is reporting on the live tour, us, right? We sat down for 3 hours and basically spilled the beans about every plot point possible. So that's how you, as someone who lives overseas and cannot experience it, that's how you can experience it, right? I experience history through podcasts and through, reading books and watching documentaries. I wasn't there during World War II or World War I, but I know they existed. I know what happened. Like, that's canonical to our real world timeline.
Yeah, and you wouldn't be in the discussion if you knew nothing about World War II. You wouldn't take part in an ongoing conversation if you didn't know what the details were really that happened for this battle or whatever it may be. You have to have some confidence in the discussion that you're having, and if you don't consider everything, it's hard. And Star Wars is something that's very hard because the canon is so wide and so huge at this point. And I consider myself a giant Star Wars fan that knows as much as anybody can try to know. But I also still haven't seen the new show season 2 of Star Wars Resistance. I saw like maybe 2 episodes. Everything else, I have no idea, but it's canon. I haven't read many books and stuff. So yeah, they're available to me at some point, but right now they're not because I don't own them. But yeah, it's impossible at sometimes to consider everything. But we're in a universe with Jurassic where we have 5 movies and we're trying to take in 1 live tour and 1 book, and that's it. So it's not like we're trying to take in 27 novels and 45 comic series, which Star Wars comic series is out of control and it's not humanly possible to catch up.
That's the thing, is writing new stories that are canonical around these 2 properties or around these 2 format. Like, it's not a hard job, just like in The Lost World, it's like, oh, the interiors where all the carnivores live and the big mean ones, they live in the interior of the island. And they say that. And then in Jurassic Park 3, they're like, oh, the closer you get to like the ocean, like the bigger and meaner things get. And it's like, dude, writer, you couldn't even watch the last movie. Like, so
I mean, in Fallen Kingdom and Jurassic World, the maps are completely different. The entire,
I just consider these things,
the entire
these are
island
just
is
continuity
changed.
errors.
Yeah,
is what I consider these. But we have people that want everything's got to fit into canon. Which, like, look, I talk to Chris Pugh every once in a while. I talk to Jack Ewens every once in a while. These are people that I find to be fun and interesting to interact with, and sometimes we agree. Most of the time, we may not see eye to eye. But like,
me and you barely do. So.
Oh yeah, but like, I feel like and these guys are in charge now of writing and creating content that exists outside the movies. And this was always my fear. It's canon until it's not. And so it's like, this is why I never got too invested in the DPG or too invested in like reading all this expanded material. Cause it's like, in the grand scheme of things, is Colin just going to come along and be like, we can't deal with this? Or maybe not Colin, maybe a director 5 years from now, when Colin maybe sunsets his time on this franchise, maybe a new director comes in and is like, I'm not going to sit there and read that stuff. I got to make a movie. I'm not reading it. So no, now it's not canon because I say so. And it's just like, come on, man, we gotta create some canon and we got to stick to it.
Yeah. And there's this thought that, films change over time. I mean, unless you're maybe a few select filmmakers or George Lucas. Look, Star Wars, McClunky, Star Wars literally just changed still. It's so, it's not impossible for things to change. But that's a rare exception. A lot of films don't really have drastic changes like that all the time. So films don't really change all that much. Your context and your perception of them change over time, especially when new layers are added on and new backstory is given, like Jurassic Park 3, the fact that the DPG is out there saying, that Wu was behind the scenes doing stuff and they were doing stuff that they weren't supposed to be doing. And essentially the Spinosaurus was created and is the first, of the hybrid dinosaurs. And to me, that works. I think that's a great addition. And I think it really, changes the context of that movie for me. It doesn't change the movie, but the context is a little bit different now. It's a bit more layered and nuanced, of course.
Well, and as time goes on, you also understand the history. You have to look at the history of what the movie was saying at the time, right? Like as a 7-year-old, Jurassic Park was a great, fun adventure dinosaur movie, right? But in really the context of when that movie came out, a lot of your younger audiences, this is kind of maybe commonplace because we're doing so many weird things in science these days. But like when Jurassic Park came out, they had either previously or soon after, like, was the first official clone of a sheep, and the Dolly the sheep or something.
Yeah.
But it was like, obviously, when Crichton was creating this book and when Spielberg was making the movie, this was obviously something in modern science that was coming up that people knew that scientists were trying to do. And it was like, and Crichton really likes to do this. He likes to take something really, what is deemed kind of like small and like maybe the spotlight isn't on it in science. And he likes to like blow it out of proportion and like say like, hey, here's a fantasy terrible thing that could happen if we keep going down this path. And so, I look at the context of Jurassic Park now as an adult and I'm like, wow, look at what that says about science and human greed and scientific expansion and lack of ethics in the 90s, right? Like look at what, Spielberg's War of the Worlds. It's a super, I thought it was super fun, like alien attack movie, right? But look at the context in which that movie was made. It was made very soon after 9/11, where everyone was very pro, like, go to war against the people that attacked us. And that's very much the tones you get in War of the Worlds. So like movies don't change. Those movies are exactly the same as they were the day they came out. But the context and the lens at which you look at those at different stages of your life or reflecting back on them, that can change over time.
Yeah. I want to kind of talk about what you think these movies are trying to say in general. Do you think that these movies are the J.J. Abrams style of storytelling, the mystery box? Do you think that there's much more to the story, the canon, that's kind of hidden from your eye that you're not really supposed to see?
No. No. I think a lot of that is created and manufactured like outside of the films. And so until there's a director who comes along and says, hey, I want to tell a story in the Jurassic Park universe, it's going to be canonical, but you're going to learn some things, like we're going to revisit some times and places and some things are going to come to light, but that's not what's happening.
Yeah, that's a different conversation altogether. It's kind of the Back to the Future 2 version of the world where you see thing that already happened, but from a different perspective, you're playing with time in a certain way. But there's also like you're filling in the gaps with something like a prequel, like Rogue One. You're not really, it's not some big mystery that we really cared all too much about, but the fact that they gave us this layered story about the backstory of something, that's awesome. But I think there's also this whole like Rashomon vibe that sometimes this series is tried to be given from the fans and people like that. It's kind of, I don't really feel like it's all that interesting. Like, I think it's just, it is what it is. I don't really feel like everybody's trying to lie to you. Rashomon is like, think about if you guys saw The Last Jedi. Luke Skywalker tells his version of the story, and then Kylo Ren tells his version of the story, and it's kind of like, you know, their own subjective views. And that movie is all about subjective views of how
the
things
entire
are
franchise
happening.
is about a different point of view. Like, that's the key.
Yeah,
that's the key of the whole thing, right? No, I don't think these things are trying to be mystery boxes. I think that what you see is what you get. And quite honestly, I really don't think that these stories are, aside from, I don't even know, like, there was really no even carryover of like Jurassic World. There was nothing like, I don't know. We didn't even like see like Cybo in the background. Like, I guess we saw it on a map, right? Like a production map, but like, it would have just been like, I would think more that like, I would think more along the lines of like they're telling a cohesive, interlocking story. If something like Cybo was mentioned in Jurassic World, where, you know, there's the moment where she says, "Hey, why is this Pachy cephalosaur out of its containment unit?" And someone's like, "Oh, the invisible fences are down in that sector." If they really were gonna like give a nod to like, "Hey, we're gonna move on to this thing," because I think that showing Cybo would have been a bit too on the nose, and especially for a film that they weren't sure was going to take off. But like, they easily could have thrown in the line of like, yeah, you know, those invisible fences in the volcanic region, they just they overheat too easily, and we're having problems. We've got to figure out a solution.
Yeah, like
they could have thrown in like a little one-liner, and when movie 2 comes out and it's all about the volcano, you'd have been like, oh, look at that payoff. That was kind of cool. But there's no mention of anything. If anything, Fallen Kingdom retroactively goes back and tells you about Cybo. I mean, like, it blatantly retroactively goes back to tell you about Cybo, because it's this whole news thing. Yeah. It retroactively goes back and tells you about Owen's research with the raptors. It retroactively goes like Fallen Kingdom did all these things that like, yeah, like, hey, Jurassic World's more important than it really was, you know? And it's like, I don't know. It's just so weird. Maybe my theory will change a little bit once Jurassic World 3 comes out, but no, at this point in time, it's like, I think what you see is what you get.
Yeah, it's not trying to be lost. You know, it's not trying to really tell some crazy underlying story that you didn't know was there. The way the first 3 movies played was, these are very disconnected stories with some similar characters. And it was nothing more than that. You had some questions, you know, I guess, but really, as a whole, I feel like Jurassic Park really didn't linger a lot of thoughts. You know, there wasn't a lot of like, oh my God, what happens now? You know, what is going on here or there or this and that? Like, there really wasn't a lot. Some properties
Jurassic Park is a fantastic film in itself. It tells a cohesive, isolated, singular story, right? And I actually think The Lost World is a great sequel. It's not a redo of Jurassic Park. It's the same content in a different scenario. Whereas most sequels, you know, when people are like, oh, Jurassic World is the direct sequel to Jurassic Park, it's like, well, yeah, because it's kind of the same thing. Like, you know, go to a park, things break out, everyone runs, the park is destroyed, right? Like, I think The Lost World, I don't get where The Lost World isn't a direct sequel. It's another chain of events that happens in that world that is not basically a repeat of the first story being told.
Yeah, the only reason is people, you know, somebody said at one point that it was a direct sequel to Jurassic Park, and people, you know, leapt to, you know, these great lengths to say that the other 2 aren't involved whatsoever. But that's not part of the Jurassic World storytelling, is not to tell you what happened in those movies and really rehash anything. All you really need to know is what happened on that first island. not these
to understand
side
our
stories.
story.
Not
Right.
yeah, not a side story about another island that and some other characters that really doesn't matter to what's going on this island here. So yeah, it's not like it was some big mystery. It was just telling a story that needed to be told without mentioning everything else. I do love the layering and stuff like that in Fallen Kingdom. You know, when they do mention Sorna and they do kind of like, you know, confirm it in your heart. You're like, oh, I knew it wasn't gone, but like, oh, thank God. You know, thank God they mentioned it. But you know, I don't know. I'm not really sure where else to go from here.
So let's take the conversation in this direction. We have this problem. Because I have my ideas. What do you, Brett?
Sure.
What do you do to solve the problem? Like, you're in charge. What would you do?
Nothing. I don't do anything. At this point, it's kind of like I was saying with the casting, you know, bring back everybody, just do it all. Right now, I'm ambivalent about canon. It doesn't matter to me because right now I feel like it's unsolvable unless you're to actually sit down and say to the world with confidence that this is what matters and this is what doesn't matter. Make the list. Colin needs to make a video, not go on Twitter and just say a few tweets. There needs to be some sort of firm, concrete, you know, description. And I'm not talking about something called soft canon, because like I said, you can't combine the live tour and Jurassic World Evolution, two things that are drastically different. There just needs to be a hard and firm, concrete list of things that need to be told as canon. And if you want the complete story,
what's your answer? Is there no? Can we not have a video game that's just like fun and then also doesn't count? Like, what would you do?
We can. That's besides the point. I'm not talking about enjoyability of the series or anything like that. I'm specifically mentioning the actual canon. This has nothing to do with really head canon or you know, side stories that really don't matter in the grand scheme of things. This is specifically a conversation about canon. So if you do want to take in absolutely everything, there should be some sort of definitive article that says what is. So specifically, you know, the films obviously need to be on this list. Battle at Big Rock needs to be on this list. I personally think Jurassic World Live Tour should be on that list. The Evolution of Claire, you know, whether we trust that confirmation or not, that should be on that list. Mizrahi Global, DPG, Extinction Now should be on the list. That's it. Everything else has too many issues.
Isn't it funny? We live in a day and age where literally a multi-million billion-dollar company could buy a domain name and literally just put a timeline on it with links to all the important stuff, and then have another link that says, and here are more Jurassic adventures for your enjoyment. Like,
yeah,
this would not be difficult to do.
Literally every time a new Star Wars thing comes out, they update the timeline, and it's literally a timeline that has it looks like a complete mess at this point because there's so many things, but
sure,
that's what we need. We have I want the creators to have confidence. Right now, they don't. They have no confidence, and I am confident in saying that myself, because if they did, they would create material for us to make us care. And right now, they're unfortunately not doing the full effort to do that. Like I'm saying, Jurassic World Live Tour is incredible. Everybody that worked on that did an amazing job. This is not to say that that's bad or anything, but I'm saying like the company behind everything really needs the confidence to tell everybody that this is something that matters. And if you want to take it all in, if you want to enjoy the entire story, you need to see it.
Yeah, I think that like it would be so easy for them to just make a timeline. And I mean, because look, at the end of the day, it's about selling IP, right? Like it only exists to make money. Like that's really what this exists for. And so like if I was put in charge, I'd be like, okay, we're going to make a timeline. Everyone in the world can access this timeline, and when something is official, it's going to go on that timeline. When something is unofficial, it's going to go in this subcategory of Jurassic Adventures. And that's where the Topps comics are going to exist. That's where the Kenner toys are going to, that's where the Mattel toys are going to exist. Mattel toys, they're not canon. Mattel makes, let's say, like an Iguanodon toy. We've never seen an Iguanodon in the films, so it's not canon,
Yeah.
Or I guess, I haven't read Evolution of Claire, so maybe there's one in there. I'm not sure. But the problem with Jurassic Park creating an actual official canon, it's that there constantly needs to be new dinosaurs to grab everyone's attention. And so I think that's what's at the stem of all of this whole problem. We know that there were like X amount of species on Nublar in the first movie. He says specifically, yes, there's like so many species in the pens, right? So we know that on Nublar, there are that many species. Then we introduced Sorna, which now we're introduced to a problem. Well, wait, there's new dinosaurs on Sorna that are not accounted for on Nublar. Okay, that's easily explained away. They were making different dinosaurs on Sorna, and they had just not been moved to the park yet. Cool, done, awesome. That is totally makes sense. They didn't mention any specific number in Jurassic or in Lost World or Jurassic Park 3. So sure, we can accept the knowledge that if a dinosaur exists on Sorna, doesn't necessarily mean it existed on Nublar. Now, it has to exist on Sorna in order for it to exist on Nublar, right? So cool. The math totally works out. It's a little fuzzy, but it works. Great.
And that's what the DPG does to kind of fill those gaps.
Sure, because then we get to Jurassic World, and for some dumb reason, they give Zachary Gray, the youngest kid, they give the youngest kid a line about dinosaur numbers, and it's like all of it. Like, now the math doesn't make any sense whatsoever, and this is where the DPG gets super screwed, because they have to weave this web of reasoning as to why dinosaurs existed here but don't exist here, but now exist in Jurassic World, and then move over to Fallen Kingdom, and there's a list on the Jurassic World hotel website that's got these dinosaurs, but these dinosaurs don't exist in the movie. It's
unfortunate. It really shouldn't be that way. There shouldn't this outlet of viral marketing shouldn't really be used to explain inconsistencies. It really shouldn't be. It should be used to build the universe, to make it bigger and better, which it is being used for, but it's also being used to correct issues, which is, I think, a shame.
Yeah, because it could be used for something great. Instead, it's filling in this desire for everyone to have this cohesive official canon, which I want, but I'm fully willing to admit that like look, if you just don't mess with it, then people like not knowing is almost better than knowing, right? And I think we've all learned that from the Star Wars prequels and like Solo.
Yeah, I love those.
No. I'm not saying that they don't have value.
Canon to me, bro.
What?
They're canon to me.
They're canon to me too. I don't necessarily like them. But what I'm saying is, like, I didn't need to know how Han Solo got his name. In fact, I'm a little disappointed.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I'm a little disappointed with how he got his name. I was happy him just being Han Solo, and like, there was somewhere out there was Mom and Dad Solo. Like, I was fine with that.
Sure.
Because not knowing, like, don't address something that doesn't need to be addressed. Let some things just kind of like fade away and like let people have questions, because every time we try to fill in these blanks, we make this web of storytelling that like it takes like 10 extra steps to get to a conclusion, when sometimes the easiest answer is one, to ignore it, or two, like to think about a really easy, dumb answer.
So let me ask you this. I think Jack Ewan's put this out on Twitter at some point when he still had it. Something along the lines of, from the viral marketing team, what do you want to see the approach be? Something along these lines, like in the future for, the next movie.
So what's the question to me?
That is the question. What do you want to see the viral marketing be in the approach to the next movie? When I answered, I said something along the lines of, I want to see less filling in the gaps, and I want to see more expansion of new material. So that's exactly what I just said before. That was my answer. In your eyes, when you see the DPG, or not the DPG, but just like the viral team creating content for the next go around, like what sort of inclusion do you want from that?
I mean, I thought DPG was way cooler than Mizrahi Global. Like I thought it was cool because they were kind of creating something forward thinking. Like they created this movement that was existing in the world, and then when we saw the movie, we got a peek into what's been happening, right? Like, so they created like essentially the beginning of the DPG, and then we saw like the quote unquote end of it, right? We don't know if it's really over, but like we saw the outcome of what they were viral marketing. So I thought that was all really cool.
Yeah, it was very forward thinking, but I think a lot of it, like we were saying, it needed to have these gaps filled. So it was a lot of looking back, and that's kind of where I stand. Is I don't want to look back so much and try to fill these gaps. I want to kind of look forward and see what we have outside of that, because when you try to fill so many gaps, eventually you're going to step on your own toes or somebody's toes and just make a mess, I think.
Yeah, it's really hard to answer because like I think viral marketing is really cool for people that, you know, want to read into that kind of stuff. And like honestly, like if I was offered some kind of job to write viral to write history for the Jurassic Park saga, I would definitely take it. Like the Chaos Theorem guy, like people, they're obviously no brainer. Of course, take that job. But like I guess my answer is kind of like, I don't know if I really need to see anything. Like I'm going to go see the movie regardless. Like, you know, I guess.
You'll read, if you read the stuff, you'll consider that in your head, maybe moving forward, especially in a position where we are, where we're thinking about these things all the time, you know, like we go into the movie thinking, oh, I wonder what we'll see from that marketing, you know, wonder how that'll pay off.
And I've always been really open, especially I've been open with like Jack and Chris about the fact that like, I get really hesitant to want to embrace what they've written because I'm so afraid for them that one day a director comes along and just wipes it clean. And not only will they have spent hours and time creating something that is, you know, kind of beautiful, but like, then that just gets wiped away by some person who doesn't want to deal with it. Like that to me that's like hurtful. And so I
agree.
And so I get when people are like, you know, I get when you're upset that the live tour because you loved it, right? And I loved it too. I totally understand being upset when these corporate people come in or these stewards of the franchise and say, hey, this thing you love, like, look, no one is complaining when something you hate gets taken out of continuity, right? Like, but when it's something that you love, that really kind of hurts. Being told that this thing that you love and invested time and invested emotion, invested brain power thinking about, it just simply doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's a huge bummer.
It's a shame. It's a shame, man. And you kind of asked me before, you know, what do you do now? Like what's the answer? And I think there's the answer is if you are going to come forward and say what is canon or make a better approach to not sit there and kind of throw it in their faces and say this is soft canon. That felt a bit awkward. And I know many people have approached me and said the same thing. It didn't feel right. It felt like a mock or a mockery of what they've been working on. And that should never be the case. It shouldn't really feel like you're throwing something in somebody's face like that. I want some, like I said, confidence in the work. If they are going to go to that approach and start being more serious about this and include stuff in canon and actually firmly say it is, do it. Yes, please do that. But at this point in time, we've said already that the 5 films are already a mess as it is. If you really want to dig down deep, it's a mess. But and then considering everything else that's out there, nothing really being all that congruent, sure, it's a big mess. At this point in time, I'm saying I don't really care about canon in Jurassic. I'm going to be open about it. I don't care because if they're not going to care, I don't care.
Well, and it's such a bummer. You know, you bring up this concept of not having confidence in the brand, and it is so true because they easily could have said, at the very beginning of Jurassic World, they could have said, we would like to, you know, they could have come out with a press release. Jurassic Park has been a staple of the science fiction adventure. Jurassic Park is a modern day classic, and being a modern day classic, we would love to reboot the franchise, and we would like to let Spielberg and Johnson's Jurassic franchise be a cohesive trilogy as it is, and we would like to set that aside as a beautiful franchise from the 90s. What we would like to do is we would like to come in and we would like to reboot the franchise, a full, fresh reboot. We're going to retell the story of Jurassic Park. We're going to retell the story of the Lost World, and we're going to call it under the guise.
You're just getting too wild.
Do you think I'm getting too wild that they could not have easily have just wiped the slate clean in 2015 and been like, look, we're rebooting the whole franchise. The original stuff doesn't count towards it.
No.
And
you're too wild. You're too wild. Because it's still too soon. Jurassic Park is still a widely, highly considered film that people love every single day. And it's not like, you know, a forgotten thing or something that really needs rebooting at this moment. Instead of erasing everything, I think you can live with the mess.
Dude, no way. Jurassic Park was fantastic. I will not deny that. And The Lost World was fantastic. But you could not tell me that between 2001 and 2013 that franchise was not dead in the water.
Okay, I mean, I can't really argue with that. I guess.
It was like over 10 years. They easily could have been like,
for us, it wasn't. You know, for a lot of us, we were still, you know, actively thinking about it every year, every day, wondering when this would happen.
Totally.
But
they easily could have come out and been like, look, we're going to redo Jurassic Park. And back in the writer's room, they could have been like, hey, guys, we're going to redo Jurassic Park, but let's do something cool. Let's give it this deep lore.
That's a conversation for another day, I think. But
that's fair.
I think, you know, if they, like I said at the top, is if they had stated that, you know, like Star Wars did, that everything moving forward is canon, which the model was there, they had everything to go off of, they could have done it. But they didn't. And if they had done that, we could have lived with a mess of, you know, some of these inconsistencies here and there. That's fine. But, you know, it just, like I said, this goes back to confidence from Universal. It was never there to begin with. It goes to the theme parks.
And that's
they didn't have the confidence to actually build stuff the time they needed to build it. They ended up building different attractions. It goes back to the comics. We were promised some comics, never happened. No confidence. So where is all the stuff? And they seem to be getting confidence. They got the confidence a little bit here, you know, during Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. We saw one of the biggest marketing campaigns I've ever seen in my life for any movie. Blows away The Rise of Skywalker, which is the end of the saga for that series.
Wait, what blows away the Skywalker?
Fallen Kingdom, the marketing campaign behind that movie blows away The Rise of Skywalker's marketing campaign. Easily.
Sure.
So the confidence was there in that film only specific
but is that confidence
universe
though? Because like what my point is like they obviously didn't have confidence in Jurassic World, the first Jurassic World, because they insisted on riding the coattails of Jurassic Park.
Not back then. Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom is when they finally decided, oh, I'm gonna write a book. We're gonna release a video game. We're gonna put an audio drama, choose your own adventure on Earplay for Amazon. We're gonna do all this stuff, and they did it, and it all came out all at the same time. And then even still, they kind of dropped off after that, except for, you know, Evolution, which is still producing content as we're seeing. But you know, no conversation still around comic books or further novels. It really shouldn't be a film's coming up, let's produce stuff. It should be, let's produce stuff always.
So
the confidence
I will not disagree with let's produce stuff always. like 100%. Like there needs to be something, and I'm so excited for Camp Cretaceous. I don't care if it's canon or not canon. I would love for it to be canon.
We didn't even touch on that. Really, you mentioned it. You mentioned it real quick, but like, I have no confidence right now that that's going to be canon. None whatsoever. And to me, that lessens the
I don't have confidence
impact.
It's going to be canon either, but are you still not going to wake up on day one and watch that on the first Saturday that you can?
So right now, Disney Plus, the Mandalorian is huge. I am waking up 5:50, setting my alarm for 5:50, watching that show at 6 a.m. before I do anything.
Yeah, see, I'm going to get off this it's midnight now, dude. I'm going to get off this I've not seen it yet. I'm going to get off this podcast and I'm going to go watch it well beyond the time when I would normally go to bed.
Sure. Now, Camp Cretaceous, that comes out. I mean, that's going to be on Netflix. It's going to be bingeable, but I'm not waking up at 5 a.m. when I know it's not going to matter, unfortunately. I have no confidence that it's going to be canon and it's going to be a greater grand story that fits into our universe here, it's a story that needs to be told. I don't know. I don't have faith that it will be canon. So that gives me less incentive to be extremely excited about it. Now, I will certainly take it in. I'm definitely going to watch it. Don't get me wrong. But for instance, like the Lego stuff, I know it really doesn't matter. So I'm not, I'll maybe get to it. I've seen a few episodes here and there, but I don't have the service and I can't really watch it on demand or anything. So I'll get to it when I can and try to figure it out. I'm just not amped to get to it right away. That might fall in the same reign for Camp Cretaceous if it really is told to us that this is if I hear the word soft canon one more time, I don't even know. I don't know what I'll do.
It's funny that you bring that up because I think, like, let's say everything was canon, right?
Yeah.
I would be more inclined to like revisit things, but you're right. I don't revisit things that aren't necessary, that aren't at all canon. So like, I played Jurassic Park, the game, once. I played the Lost World game once. Like all these things I've only ever done once. Things that are canon, I go back to.
Yep.
Because I'm wanting to seek out that story.
I've played Battlefront 2 several times over, and I've watched each episode of The Mandalorian at least 5 times. And so like, this is stuff that they have the confidence to keep me invested. And that's what's so frustrating is they're giving me no reason to stay invested.
Isn't it weird that we have The Mandalorian and we have Battle at Big Rock. Mandalorian and Battle at Big Rock come out the same year. And they're both out there to answer the question, can this IP do a TV show? And Jurassic is given this measly little budget to do a 5-minute thing that winds up on FX. And Disney's like, nah, man, go ahead. 8 episodes. You got this. Do it.
It's not even that. There's also the Cassian Andor series. There's the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. So there's it's everything. It's
like,
everything.
There's no question whether or not this can hold a TV series. And yet, like, Universal is still playing around with, like, I don't know. Like, it might be expensive. Yes, it's going to be expensive. Yeah. Mandalorian looks fantastic. And you see every penny spent on that screen.
Right now, it's the confidence issue. And it's the fact that, hey, I feel like they have no faith in us. No faith in the community, no faith in the fans. And they're not, I don't know. It's all a stupid conversation. We're talking about a set of films and trying to get all serious about it. But I don't know.
I think it was wise for us to shove this at the end of the podcast. If there's anybody listening still, good on you.
Well, I don't know about you, but I think that takes us to the end of the canon conversation. There's certainly more to be said, which I'm sure we'll continually say over time. But I think we did a decent job summing up at least our feelings and talking about what canon is and where it exists in this franchise and what we really wish they did. So that's what I'm going to stick with. And no editing there. I'm not going to edit any of that out. So what you heard is our venting and our frustration. So
can I tell you something?
Go ahead.
In my headcanon, the dino trackers existed on Sorna and were shipped over to Nublar to contain what was going on after Jurassic Park.
I like that. That's great.
Pretty cool, right?
Headcanon's pretty awesome when you
Guess
when
what?
when you want to take everything.
Guess what?
What? Doesn't matter.
I'm wrong.
You're wrong. Yeah, you're wrong. You are
But
wrong.
in my headcanon, it matters.
I personally love the roller coaster from Jurassic Park the game. I think that's a fantastic addition to the park.
The bone rattler or the bone shaker. Or
yeah. But guess
Oh,
what? Doesn't exist.
doesn't matter.
Not a thing. But
you're wrong. You're wrong. You're wrong to like it, Brad. That's all I gotta say. If you like it, you're completely wrong.
Yeah, headcanon is great. Consider whatever you want to consider, but don't bring it to the table when we're having a conversation.
100%. I would never have a realistic conversation about Jurassic Park and bring up Sergeant T-Rex Turner and Harpoon Harrison and Jaws Jackson as canonical additions.
Those weapons that everybody had, yeah, that and the you know, the hang glider and stuff like all this stuff is so wild and out there. And
how cool would it have been if, like, when the Indominus was like eating all those people, and you're looking at the board of they're not Dino Trackers. What are they? They're
the ACU troopers.
ACU. Would it have been great to just see Turner, Jackson, and Harrison up there?
Oh my God. Yeah.
And lost my mind.
That would have been great. That's one day when Jurassic is rebooted.
This is what's going to happen. They got to reboot it, and I just need to be put in charge, right? And it'll be great. Y'all will love it.
That's what fan fiction is for, man.
Oh, don't tempt me.
So, where can everybody find you if they want to yell at you about your canonical, biblical canonical factoids?
Please come talk to me over at Aaron D. Byer on Twitter. You can also contact me via our Facebook group, where if you go to Facebook and you happen to be on a desktop, you can answer some questions, because you have to answer the questions in order to get in the group. And there are 2 questions. Name an actor from Jurassic Park, and I'll give you acceptable answers. Sam Neill, Laura Dern, Jeff Goldblum, all acceptable answers. And then name a host or contributor. Brad Jost, Aaron Byer, acceptable answer. You label those 2 things, you are in the group.
We have so many contributors. You could name anybody, but for some reason people always leave that blank, and I'm like, oh, sorry.
So yeah, if you join the group on your cell phone, it might be kind of hard to find those questions, but please do look out for them. That is like a thing that you have to do to get into the group, and it's super fun. I interacted a little bit in there today with the group, talking about what we were going to do on The Wire. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. People are having a good time.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me for the November Jurassic Wire. And I guess I'll see you in December when we have some more canonical debates to go talking about. Hopefully nothing else is stricken.
I can't handle more canonical debates. I can't.